does a majority of our landscape architecture work and park design. So he's going to do some slides on the DNR grant, and then collectively we can all have a discussion, having both of us as part of the conversation. So tonight we are talking about Creekside Park, which is located near the Bluffs neighborhood along Jonathan Carver Parkway and County Road 40. The second picture on the slide right now is current conditions. So it's currently, well, that's not actual current. Current conditions on a beautiful summer day. Largely being used right now for public services storage. So you'll see that there's a chain link fence surrounding the site, as well as a gravel pathway. Primarily storage is in the center, so if you drive past, you'll see some different materials stored by public services. Historically, the site has been used as our wastewater treatment facility, so this is from our GIS from, I think, 2010 that showed the ponds that are there, as well as a lot of the infrastructure. So just some history, the city owns the entire site, we have for a long time, so this would be a reuse of the site and an infill development of a park.
Does our ownership include that weird six-sided piece there?
It does.
Into as well. Okay.
So the city owns this piece here and then this one as well. I believe this is where the HOA properties start.
I'm not sure.
We're not
See your mouse.
Kind of where the A in Carver is, going down.
Okay. Okay. Great.
So a lot of the information that I gathered was by an article by Nick Mason from 2012. It is the longest article, but it made me really
yeah, that was Nick. It was a long article.
I got so much information. Like, if anyone needs info about this site, I know it all right now. So in 2012 is when we connected to the Met Council's sewer line. Something that I thought was appropriate was Brent had a quote in 2012 that said, "I'm sure at some point the city council will sit down and take a look at it."
At some point.
Here we are.
Here we are.
The project largely kicked off with the Parks Master Plan in 2018, but as we start to move forward with some programming and some grant opportunities, we thought this would be a good time to get the concept in front of you again and do a little introduction on the DNR grant that we will be seeking funding for. So again, current conditions of the site. This picture here shows some of that storage, so you can see the large area in the center being used for storage with the fencing along. We've seen several concepts through this process. We've, like any park idea that we've had, we've tried to fit at this park at some point. There was a sledding hill at one point that got shut down pretty quick. We had a yardway site that changed. So things that have always remained are the dog parks. So the dog park moving forward will be there as well. The frisbee golf, and then just the infrastructure improvements, so things like parking. We have some information about like a drinking fountain, so utility things like that, as well as just some different options that we've explored in the park. Sledding hill didn't work, it's actually a bluff, so we can't mess with it. We would have required some grading. Yardway site, there were some other opportunities that were pursued where Carver residents have different places to bring yard waste, and then we largely had an area that was just to be programmed, so we were keeping empty space as we continue to develop some of our parks to see what fits there nicely. So
we also talked about that entrance off of 40 versus JCP, right?
Yes.
That was kind of expensive and painful.
Yeah, kind of. It's like
just a little.
It was really expensive.
Right,
yeah. So that would have crushed the budget pretty quickly should we have come off County Road 40 instead of GCP.
Right.
So through this work, we also have partnered with an organization called Great River Greening. So they are working on site cleanup, the creek in this area. Brent, Aaron, and I sat in a meeting with Lucius and Todd from Great River Greening last week, and when I tell you they're two of the smartest people I've ever sat in a room with, like the things they can talk about, we all just, I'm going to speak for all of us, but just like smiled and nodded along with the level of detail they know about this creek. So it's largely stream bank stabilization, so there's a lot of erosion in the creek that we have recognized could be cleaned up. We actually have also learned a lot about the site that the creek actually used to run along the back lines of the bluff lots, so the creek was actually relocated several decades ago.
Interesting.
So in that, the creek actually got shorter, which has caused a lot of erosion because there's more water traveling through it. So through the work with Great River Greening, they're working to lengthen the creek in really simple terms, which is interesting and something that I don't know a ton about, but it's been really interesting to learn through this process.
Can I ask a question? Do they know if they would lengthen it in that park or different parks?
So it is in the park area. It's the furthest like west, kind of how the creek comes down on the westerly side of the plan. You can see all of the lines together. So it pulls the creek away from the road a little bit. So
I'm sorry, how do you lengthen a creek? You make it meander more?
yeah,
Okay.
and then you can make like the riverbed a little bit wider, the creek bed wider. So working with them, they are a bit further along in their work than we are in the park development. So we are kind of playing off their work to say, have this creek in really good shape, and then we'll react to it with the frisbee golf. So the frisbee golf might need to adjust a little bit, but we'll still be in this park based on new creek location. So a lot of that work is slated to happen this fall. There's going to be a lot of stabilization and then also some reforestation in this area to make sure that the creek can continue to be healthy after a pretty significant investment of like $260,000. We have a $30,000 match required that will be coming from park dedication over the next 3 to 5 years of the grant. So that's the project Great River Greening, which we're excited about. We also are partnering with them hopefully on Riverside Park, so some more to come hopefully on another park project with Great River Greening. They've been a really great partner to the city thus far.
Are we still considering the volunteer event?
We hope so, but it'll just depend on the timing of
Sure.
the events. Yeah.
What's that?
So with some of the reforestation, we, as part of the grant application, we offered a volunteer event to potentially do some tree planting.
I think our hood would be interested in that. Yeah.
And the master gardeners would be happy to help.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
we'll
I
keep
like
you all
it.
posted if and when that happens.
Okay.
So this is the plan by Great River Greening. Again, so much information that I don't really understand, but they're doing really good work and it's gonna be a great project. So the creek will likely look a little bit different.
Awesome.
So moving into some information, I'm going to skip to that one for now. So moving into the new park concept that were developed, you can see that we've enhanced just the visuals of it a little bit to make it feel more like a park, make it a little more visually pleasing than some other versions that we were looking at previously. I'd ask tonight that we focus on the things that are in yellow, so we are proposing tonight to phase the park. So the DNR grant will cover a portion of the work that we hope to do, and it's the things in yellow. So blue would be phase 2, so thinking about yellow things that we've programmed in this area. Again, large dog park, small dog park. You'll see the addition of pickleball courts. I know that's something a lot of people are talking about right now. It seems to be like the new it sport, so pickleball. You'll also see that the parking is flipped. We previously had it along County Road 40. It's flipped to the back side of the park now, which we think offers a better visual design, but it also makes the site work a little bit better. So thinking through some of those details, there's a picnic shelter, again with future in the blue, so some trail work, frisbee golf, trail kiosk, etc. So overall, this is the layout for the park, and then thinking through so the phase 1 breakdown, so the things in yellow. Are these your slides, Jonathan? Am I going ahead?
Oh, go ahead.
These are.
Yeah.
No, this is
Yeah,
you. Take it
you're
away.
covering it great. Yeah, so I mean, I think you're probably better covering this stuff than I am, but yeah, essentially what we looked at doing was phasing the project, and I can get a little more into an explanation of how we arrived at phase 1 items versus the overall plan, but essentially estimated phase 1 total project is about $810,000. The DNR outdoor rec grant, so the funding request through that would be about $350,000, which is the maximum grant amount that's offered through that program, and that would leave the city portion of the funding at $460,000. And I'll kind of give a little bit more background on that program, and just so you have a sense of what that is for those who might not be familiar with it. I'm not sure if the city of Carver has used this program before. I don't believe you have. I know, Brent, you said you have it previously.
Not
but-
recently.
Yeah. So this is a grant through the DNR, and this is one that we frequently use with clients who are pursuing park projects, especially larger park projects. The maximum grant award is $350,000, but it can be as little as $10,000. And it's a 50% match. So if you're being awarded $350,000, the project would have to be at least $700,000. And the overall purpose of the program is to increase and enhance outdoor recreation facilities in local and community parks throughout the state. So cities, counties, different municipalities can apply for this grant with the purpose of enhancing their park system.
Are these, is this the grants that we got for like the I can't, it's been a long time, for the archery range, things like that down there.
That was prior to me.
Oh, okay. I got some grants from the DNR down there. I also
Okay.
can't remember, I wrote them so long ago, but we did get money back in the day. Okay.
Okay.
I was curious if it was the same funding.
Yeah, very well could have been. They have a specific list of elements that can be funded, and you typically have to include at least one of those, and then they have like secondary amenities that can be funded in conjunction with those primary amenities. But the DNR kind of decides or scores your application based on primarily on this SCORP, or State Comprehensive Outdoor Recreation Plan. And so the goals of this plan change every year. And so these are kind of the criteria that they've identified for this year for the grant submittal. And so these factor 60% into your grant application. You're scoring based on these items, and then the other 40% is some additional criteria that they've identified. But essentially the SCORP this year looks at focusing on connecting people to the outdoors. So really looking at improving accessibility and connectivity through kind of a multimodal transportation plan. So connecting peds and bike facilities, vehicular connections, things like that. Acquiring land and creating opportunities. So placing a priority on acquisition and development in densely settled, rapidly growing areas. So, Carver is rapidly growing, I would say, and this is a great opportunity to kind of fill a gap in the park system that the city has seen. Taking care of what we have with regular reinvestment to ensure safe, high-quality experiences for current and future users. So I think, utilizing this existing site and seeing the kind of the potential with it for a park is a great example of that. And then coordinating among partners by creating integrated and accessible information and enhancing coordination across jurisdictional boundaries. This kind of sits right on the edge of town, and I think there's opportunities that this facility would be used by adjacent jurisdictions as well. And just to give an idea of the timeline associated with this, so this is not a quick process by any means. So it takes some time. So essentially the overall process would span through June of 2025 for construction. So this year we'd be looking at tonight the council workshop, kind of getting buy-in on the master plan and pursuing this outdoor rec grant. We'd probably, after that, we'd post the plan online and look for opportunities for public comment on the plan. And then from there, looking at in early March, taking the plan to council for adoption of the overall master plan. Submittal for the initial grant would be by March 10th. And so that's kind of the early application timeline, and that allows the DNR to provide feedback on our grant. They'll provide feedback and opportunities for us to strengthen our grant and things that we could consider to make it more competitive. And then the final application would be due March 31st. This summer, they would announce the winners of the grant awards. And then from there, the final design of the park would occur in the fall and winter. 2024, we'd bid the project, and then construction would begin in the fall of 2024 with a completion date of June of 2025.
So what we're looking for tonight is just an affirmation on the updated concept, get some feedback on it, and then looking for your support of us going for the DNR grant application. Also say, should we not be successful with the grant application, development of this park is not likely, just based on costs, some other priorities we might have. We might be able to do some of the work in the park, but largely looking for that DNR funding to fill a pretty big gap that we're looking to fill for Creekside Park. So we are open to comments, questions, and then obviously we'll continue working with Great River Greening since that is already underway.
What are some of the positives we have for writing this grant that's going to score us higher? What are some of the things that are going to score us better?
ADA and accessibility is a huge one. So any improvements that are done that we want funding for need to be accessible. That's a huge criteria for them. That in addition to just connectivity, and I think this park does a great job at connectivity. I mean, we're connecting to that trail along JCP that essentially connects throughout the entire community.
So I'd say another piece is that it's a redevelopment site, so this isn't
right
in a new neighborhood that's in a
Yeah.
former farm field. It's, by some definitions, maybe a little bit blighted, and so like, there's a higher, better community use. It also has some pretty significant connections via the county trail system. We can eventually dig into the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Trail System is kind of a stone's throw away. So and then frankly, the Great River Greening investment, I think enhances kind of that partnership commitment, which are at least a lot of the elements that we've had success in other DNR grants and other state funding projects. So that's kind of what initially kind of caught our interest, and then we started having a bigger discussion about this.
Yeah, the protection of natural resources too is important. So having that creek running through the site and knowing that this park is going to be there and it's going to be acting to help protect the creek itself and then the bluffs too is a big asset as well.
Have we ever talked to the whatever association is on Carver Creek Circle right there about getting Outlot B? And I'll just gonna preface why. So Outlot B obviously is fairly flat. It's basically the same as this. It's a little overgrown. But back when I did Park and Rec, there was talk about trying to get a trail through there. So I did walk it with a little wheelie, and you can then get up to the entrance of Bluff Park and the entrance to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife, which is another connectivity piece.
Yeah, we have, it's somewhere between 7 and 10 years ago, but they were only interested if the city would take all of Carver Bluffs Parkway, that middle green area, and then there were some other HOA pieces, so it was kind of like, yes, but you'd have to take all these other areas too, and at the time the council wasn't interested in grabbing the whole lot.
So since that, almost a decade has passed, I mean, maybe it's worth another discussion with them.
I think we talked recently and
Because I got some
Dave,
contacts at the HOA.
yeah, Dave told us it was gonna be a really hard thing to do because you have to have a certain percentage of
Oh,
HOA
yeah.
members.
Yes.
We
To
looked at it
participate.
for our sanitary sewer project.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
This says trail, not sewer,
Was that
though, maybe.
before or after?
Well, I think it wasn't the usage, if I'm remembering correctly, it was the getting a quorum that they needed to
Yes.
vote for it.
Yeah.
In favor of it and getting an HOA together, and it was just gonna be logistically more trickier than agreement.
And Dave
necessarily.
described it potentially as going door to door, didn't he?
Yeah, and used a timeline of years and not months.
I don't understand the years, why it would take years.
If getting everything, I don't remember the
Okay.
details.
Oh, I
but he
didn't,
said it would
so
take
we went from
years
quorum
instead.
to years, so I was like, well, I hope
To
it
get
doesn't take them years to get a quorum.
He thinks it will, and getting an agreement and going back and forth. That's what I remember, I don't
And
know.
it's not just the HOA board, it's every person in that neighborhood.
And is it just Carver Creek Circle that's on that one?
No, it's the
Oh,
whole.
that is, okay, because at
So
one
it's-
time I thought they had a different one down there.
They have a different one on Ridgecrest,
Okay,
but the bigger one is this one.
okay, so that's connected to the whole?
Yeah.
Okay, okay. What's a lot B? As long as I was talking, but for when we put this out to the public, I think it might be a good idea to include some photos of what the amenities will look like, not just the overall park plan. I know, and because when we've talked about this in the past, lighting, there's a big, they go a little, get a little apprehensive with the lighting, so,
Yes, so that'll be below.
yeah, and it was still was a.
I know.
Yep. And I don't want to make the assumption, but, the lighting that we have coming down 6th Street that's a little more decorative might be something that we would want to have there rather than big cobra heads in that lot. And maybe that would,
Be more amenable.
yeah, than having that. So I don't know if you guys have discussed, if you're even far enough to discuss what lighting options look like there. But I think if you're looking at big cobra heads, we're gonna get a lot more pushback than we are with something that's a little more decorative and a little bit softer.
Yeah, right now, we are budgeting for 3 lights in the parking lot, and kind of just those standard shoebox style parking lot lights, kind of, but an LED version. So similar to what you'd see at the transit center, for example, or the school parking lot, but an LED.
I can't picture those right now. Are they the big, basically cobra head ones, like your big overhead?
They're
I can't think what they are.
they're not Cobra head style, but they are kind of just a.
Think of
more
a literal
standard-
shoebox.
Yeah, it's like
with
a
light
rectangle.
pointed.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
The Cobra head
Okay.
is not protected,
Yep.
so.
Okay.
Yeah, which you'd see in most
Yeah.
parking lots. we could do a more decorative fixture, we just have to up the cost a little bit.
Okay, it'd be nice to see the difference there. I don't know, I just think a more decorative one in a brand new park would be a little nicer if we could. And again, the neighbors might find it a little bit easier to tolerate.
Well, and think of this as, I would say, like steps, so like this is like the concept plan, right? Do you like the amenities, do you like the locations of the amenities? If you're successful with the grant, then you would direct Bolton and Maine to prepare plans and specs, and then you can say, well, we want this type of light versus that one, and we'd rather have, you know.
But I'd rather get a little ahead of it when we go to put this out for public comment.
Yeah, so what timing is that? So, I mean, if we get the grant, would we then put it out for, do we have a parks, what do we call them? Not a commission.
Advisory group.
Advisory group, would they be involved? What do we think?
So for the grant application, it largely will be this plan, just based on the timing that we have to accomplish.
Sure.
And then from there, I would like to think that the DNR probably ties a lot of our work directly to this. I don't think we'd have a ton of wiggle room, so if someone,
Sure.
the Parks Advisory Group said, hold on, we want a hockey rink here instead. I don't think that's feedback that we'd be able to meaningfully take at that
Okay,
point.
so maybe it's just a public opinion kind of
Well,
post thing.
Or if there's other, like, so we can get more specific on the lighting or lighting. Is there other areas that you want more specificity on?
Yeah, I have some.
So, a couple more questions. So, I believe in my, I'm pointing at Aaron back there, my conversation with you guys about the trunk thing, we talked about the extra enhancements of Jonathan Carver Parkway south of 4th Street coming potentially soon in the county. Do we expect any reconfiguration of that intersection with 40 and JCP to impact the creek routing or the bridge or anything there?
Not that I know of right now. I don't think it was getting that involved for
Okay.
that project.
And
So,
we've been in touch with the county as well
Okay.
about this
I like
project.
this, okay.
and then just the sewer project that we've been talking about a little bit too, it kind of gets into the entrance drive, but it doesn't get into the full park area, so it doesn't really have a major
Oh, that
impact.
goes along, is it on the east or west side of JCP?
So the sewer runs through this site right now, but I'm saying if we were to do an upsizing project
Yes,
in
that's
a
what I
few
mean.
years, we would, the pipe would tie back into the existing system within that first part of the driveway coming in. So it's not like you'd be taking out the parking lot or the pickleball court to
Gotcha,
do that
okay.
project in the future, so.
Okay.
For restroom facilities, is it just gonna be porta potties, and can we ever hook into a system? I mean, anytime in the relative future that we could hook into a system for bathrooms?
Yeah, we have sewer and water on site, so that's not an issue, it's just, if you wanna do it now or later, so.
Okay,
Right
so
now,
we have
it's
that, we
shown,
can
it's
do
shown
it.
as portable toilets
Yeah,
right now.
Okay.
That was,
Yep.
Laura, you said you had comments?
Yeah, with, in that northwest corner where the shared entrance exit, would there be the idea of having a gate and it would, whatever the posted closed hours were, just so it doesn't become a target for vandalism or just, no one needs to be there at dark? A way to control
I
that?
don't think we do that for any other park, right? I don't know. if we do
True,
that
but
for
not
this
many parks just have one. I know Lions Park only has one entrance exit, but,
There's Riverside, and that one's really.
but that's not hard to do, or camping overnight,
Yeah, no,
Or
I'm just
you
saying,
can
like,
launch
if you
a
wanna
boat
get
at
in
kinda-
trouble,
early, late hours.
Riverside's pretty.
Yeah.
But that would require a staff member to
Ideal.
close.
Yeah, you're just,
Yeah.
you're just like in this early,
Obviously the States, right?
like, is there something where it's, you'd have a reason to tell somebody to leave? Or
Well,
a reason to
We have
make it really
police
hard to get there.
coverage
Yeah.
that runs through the parks at night, and I think
They have a
that's
pretty
the-
good light
Yeah.
or sight line though, from the roads to this, I mean.
Yeah, from both 40 and JCP, I would think, and then if you hear any noise in the park, everybody up there can hear it.
Oh,
Yeah, 'cause the noise will rise up.
But it might also help if people are concerned about the noise to say, well, these are the hours, or, I mean, it's obviously not to solve now, but just thinking of like, the concept. And then in the DNR, grant priorities, it talks about partnerships. So I would think City of Carver and then Great River, Greening. Are there others, or are we considered a partner? Who are the partners? So it's, yeah, what's in the funding priorities?
Yeah, I think that's something that we could talk about and how we could strategize that, that point. And underneath each one of these categories, there's a list of probably 10 kind of subcategories that they list, so I didn't want to get into too much detail, but there's a lot of other questions that they ask about each of these kind of categories that
Okay.
give you opportunities to kind of tie into different avenues. So I don't know if
Would it
the
help
watershed
us?
might be potentially a partner then.
Oh,
and
okay.
Great River Greening and potentially like Dahlgren Township or some
Carver County Parks.
Carver County Parks,
Okay.
yeah. So there could be some avenues we could explore as far as that too. But I would also say you don't necessarily have to hit all these categories to be successful with the grant. But if we can just speak on some of those partnerships, that'll be helpful.
All right. And then when we've been talking about, communicating this to the community, looking on that one right there, I think it's really gonna be helpful to point out that there's still some unprogrammed spots. So like to the northwest of the first pickleball courts to be built,
Yep.
how it says, future park amenity. I think
Mhm.
that's just really nice that I feel like we have some flexibility, that second phase to, like, this isn't set, yes, some parts of it will be, as far as like what's
So you want it
in
to
the
be
grant.
marked unprogrammed space then?
Yeah. And I think a lot of people don't understand what that on-program space means.
And that's where we have it in the blue, just as future park amenity. So if there was a group that felt really passionately about X, Y, Z, there is some space for it.
Anything else, Lori?
No, thank you. Eric?
My question was answered about water and sewer. I can't imagine going forward with this with porta potties. I would think a permanent bathroom facility would make a lot more sense.
I was actually thinking the same thing, but then what I like is with the park up at Ironwood, it'll just be interesting to see how that goes over. And just like if that's hugely successful, we might be able to not have that cost, but it could go the other way too.
We know one
So
person who likes outdoor potty.
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
Our fellow resident.
When I used to work for the city of Burnsville, they used to light them on fire all the
Oh,
time.
no.
So I'm
Oh
glad
my
that we don't have
gosh.
that problem here. Oh, and no, I hope no teens are watching. I'm sure they're not.
I'm sure.
I'm sure they're not.
Everyone wants to see you.
Do you have anything else, Christy?
For the disc golf course, so the actual, setup for the disc golf course is it's not that expensive. Is it more the clearing of the area and prepping that's going to be the expense? Because I like that that's coming in. We've been asked for that for a decade or more to have something like that. So I'm just wondering what our timeline might be. If that's really the holdback on the cost is kind of clearing that area, and then we have to put in a pedestrian bridge. What is that? Do we have an idea when we're looking at when that might happen?
I would say right now, a lot of this work is just dependent on the grant. So depends on what your appetite is for it too. If this phase 2 becomes a priority with our park dedication dollars,
Okay.
we could set up a prioritization list of the next parks that we're going to be working on.
Okay.
Something else that is a little bit interesting is that there's going to be some fill from Great River Greening's work, so we'll have some excess material that Chad's team could potentially lay throughout the site to make the disc golf a little more exciting instead of just through a flat area. So
Do we? And I know that this is going to be real ballpark, but any idea what that little pedestrian bridge might cost in today's numbers?
Jonathan, you got anything?
Because it's marshy right there, right? That doesn't
It is.
turn into
Yeah,
a
it's
full
marshy.
street.
Right. And I think we could potentially get by with just a culvert too.
Yeah.
Across
Okay.
there, that would be a lot more cost effective, so.
I think we are close, like the ones in Ironwood Park were closer to the $80,000 range. Just for
Yeah.
some perspective,
Okay.
because you end up putting like some concrete abutments
Mhm.
and then the actual bridge and 20% engineering.
But it could
Seems
be a culvert. A
realistic,
culvert
yeah.
could
Yeah.
technically suffice in that area. Okay.
I think it probably could, yeah, with the level of flows you can see
Yeah.
through there.
So let's go with 30 to 80, depending on what our appetite would be.
I'm good.
All right.
Until my
Um,
questions.
I like this. I love the pickleball courts. I keep hearing from folks
Yeah.
about pickleball, and it always surprises me, like what a broad range of, like everybody likes pickleball. So I think that this is good. I think that 2 is a start. I think 4 is gonna potentially still leave folks wanting more, but I think it's a good start. I do have some concerns about the dog park, and not dogs, but they're people, and they're people being good humans and cleaning up after them. But I know that this has been in the plan for a long time. I'm glad to see that we're using that existing driveway, because that was starting to get really expensive coming in from the other direction. So I think that this is great, and we have the opportunity to start working on this for literally pennies on the dollar. So I think we would be foolish if we didn't take this opportunity to submit the grant request. So that's it from me. Jonathan, Aaron, did you guys get what you needed from us on this one?
Yes.
We all good? Okay, so I think we're all in favor of moving forward with the grant.
Yes,
Okay.
for sure.
All right. Okay, moving on. Number 3, the Fire Station and Public Services Building Project. Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you, Mayor and Council. So tonight, we just kind of want to run through kind of a summary of where we've been with looking at public services space and fire station space. One thing I could, amongst others, I really want to point out specifically is tonight, we're just looking to have a conversation, to have an opportunity to kind of get refreshed on what that space study said and look at some of the recommendations you had. So if you look at the bottom of the slide, we're going to come back to you at your work session on February 21st, and Lynn's going to help lead a discussion on cost scenarios for different project scopes that you might want to look at. And you're really asking the council to consider, and this would be the first time, different scopes and strategies at your March 6th meeting, and it might take longer than that. So as you're taking all this in, please don't feel rushed that you have to make a decision tonight. Also recognizing that, I would say one of the most significant work plans and conversations the city will have with residents involved building projects and infrastructure street projects. And so we want to make sure that you get what you need prior to kind of going up to the public or community and asking for some feedback. So just a little bit of history. So back in September of 2020, the council identified and initiated a request to do a space study to look at public services and the fire department, start looking at estimates rather than we had for quite a while just kind of like a placeholder number in our long-term plan. And so this was going to be an exercise to develop a specific square footage as well as a price that we could insert and start having more, I would say, detailed conversations on a possible action. From that, in December, the city brought on Wold, which is the same architect and engineering firm that helped us with the City Hall project, and identified some study objectives. One, to look at the amount of outdoor storage at our existing facility, primarily at Jonathan Carver Parkway. You can see, just in that photo, we have some plows and vehicles outside. We also have a number of areas throughout the community that I'll run through where we have different storage. It doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to eliminate all that storage, but in some cases we might condense it and maybe be able to use other spaces in different ways as the city continues to grow. The need for services, plow trucks, and equipment to provide those services increases. One of the other study objectives that I think is somewhat kind of like a moving target, I don't know why that's picture moved up there, but looking at the existing 117 Broadway, the former fire station, our existing public services or public utilities building that's called for a number of years at Main and Broadway. I think just if you've been down to the new Getaway Motor Cafe, you can kind of already start to see that 100 block of Broadway wants to be something different already, just with the way that people are seeking parking. And so for decades, if not longer, that space at the end of Broadway has just been kind of its own thing. Even though it's next to the downtown, it's this big parking area, and we've done some things with the tugboat and community gardens to try to make it a more central space, but, you know, one of the things that I've talked to a few of the council members already is talking about trying to organize that parking space, you know, separated from a future park plan or park improvement plan that might happen at some point, you know, in the future, looking at a way to coordinate parking. And we're actually gonna be talking about that at our planning and engineering meeting tomorrow, about maybe some interim things that we can do to, you know, make sure that we're providing parking for downtown and our businesses, but also maintaining access to the public utilities garage. We have our brine tank and some other emergency equipment in there, and so gonna wanna be continuing to have a conversation with the council on parking in that area and what that site looks like in the near term and in the future. Just wanna pause there to see if everyone knows what I'm kind of connecting with on that parking issue.
I'm gonna, yeah, so I actually talked to Brent about this, so down at the, now that have a business that's open down on that end. I actually happened to be in there Thursday night, and my neighbor was working, and she said, hey, I have a question for you. There's two ladies who came in, and they said, can we park in front of those garage doors?
Yeah.
And I said,
The ones that say, you know.
no, I mean, but it's nighttime, you know, they're like, can I?
Okay.
Yeah, so I said, I wouldn't. I said, the chances of them having to get out right now are slim, but I technically no, you shouldn't. But then what I've been seeing during the mornings too is that, I guess it's kind of hard to see on Brent's picture there, but they are parking kind of straight, leaving space for the garage doors.
Yes.
But they are like where that bump out
Civic
comes
is
out.
They put
Yeah.
a little island
They,
kind
yes,
of
they
thing,
do
yeah.
make a little island of parking.
Yes.
So I had to talk to Brent, and I said, I think we really need to like look at some kind of stopgap about how we just organize that again until we
Makes sense.
have a bigger plan, because it's
Yeah.
just naturally happening, so.
I don't disagree. My one comment on that is, and this is getting a bit off topic, but on the subject of parking, you know, if we have a temporary or an early parking lot there, I think it's really important to be realistic and not to put 30 parking spots there if once the park concept comes in, if and when it ever comes in, we have to dial back that number. So I don't want to remove parking spots. So if that can only accommodate a dozen, and there are clearly more there, but if there are only a dozen spots available, let's not put 13 spots in there so that because I remember the exercise that we went through for the crossing between Lisa's place and the gas station, and the big thing that we got hung up on as a group was the loss of parking downtown, and it wasn't super significant, but I know that we as a group are really in tune to not wanting to lose any spaces downtown.
And it is striped already in front of the hotel, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
There is one of the things we're gonna wanna work out, so the right of way runs to kind of basically right under the eave of that building, and so there's a grass area, and so one of the things that I think, Jonathan, I think you put together this plan as well, is it organizes the pedestrian routes, so that's a major kind of trailhead, and so I think there's an opportunity to make sure that we're getting, as we're adding parking and more vehicular traffic in there, that we're also giving pedestrians safe harbor and access routes, either, you know, on where that sidewalk is kind of proposed, or on the, what would be the east side, I guess, of that parking area, so we can get people safely to that trail. So we'll come back with some options and some scenarios, and then get some feedback from the council on timing. It might involve an interim where we just do some striping this summer and then incorporate it into a larger plan when Main Avenue or Main Street West has some improvement projects to be done.
And
That's
can
a
you tell me,
Sorry, I was going to just say that's a really good comment about the bike and pedestrian traffic, because isn't that roughly the area of where the future Marion Junction Trail is going to shoot out?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
is there more space now from the edge of the building to where the cars are parking? Is that wider than the grassy area that's there right now?
Can you say that
Okay, so
again?
where the Devon's Hotel.
Yep.
Hartley's house, and then that was grass, it looks like it's paved in this photo.
Yeah.
Is that wider than what is there right now, than the grassy area that's in front?
I don't know.
Okay, I know it's
I believe-
concept, I just didn't know if it was.
I believe that was the job trailer for the construction site. It probably just hasn't, it's all grass now.
No, I know, yeah,
I
don't
got
know.
you. I got you.
okay, I'm
You
not
talking
sure what
about-
you're talking about.
This right here.
Yes, thank you, and up as it goes.
Yeah.
Okay, and that, okay, so we don't know, I mean, this is conceptual, obviously, if that would be wider, or,
Yeah.
I would hate for it to be any smaller, even though there may be.
Yeah, it just from the naked eye, it looks wider, So, because if you look at it, like right now, the vehicles that park right in front of the Getaway Motor Cafe would be closer to the building. And
Okay.
this concept shows something I think Getaway and the council might be interested in is widening that sidewalk and kind of putting out a pork chop or peninsula there to have some outdoor seating.
Yes, I've never heard
Never
of
heard
a
of
pork chop.
We all have Aaron's.
That's an actual term. You learned that in engineering school.
We did that at Harvey's, you know, when we reconfigured that street too, so
Right.
it's nice. The only reason I'm saying is I wanna be sensitive to the Hartleys that I would prefer it to be wider than narrower because people's, you know, the front of their cars are
Yes.
really close the way it is.
Yeah.
So if it's wider, I'm actually happier with that.
Yep, it should hopefully give them more of a defined space and kind of keep people out of their area. Because technically the sidewalk that is kind of under that eave, I think, is actually in the city right away. If you think of like how our sidewalks in the
Yeah.
downtown work. So taking all those things, you know, we're gonna want to make propose a project that's sensitive to them and Getaway Motor Cafe, et cetera. So moving forward, one of the other items is separating the turnout gear in the main apparatus bay for the public services, or not, for the fire department. And Chief Trimble's on hand. Callie, would you mind just kind of sharing with the council just kind of some talking points again on what the significance is of getting that turnout gear separated on
Sure.
the apparatus bay?
Cancer is a huge thing in the fire service nowadays. We just went through Cancer Awareness Month, was January. And really it's about preventing anything that we can for the firefighters. So as we know, when we start the trucks up, it puts diesel exhaust into the bay. Along with, after we fight the fires, the hose and everything that's been in the fire is exposed to significant carcinogens and all the toxic chemicals that come out of the fire, along with our turnout gear. Now we do special things with our turnout gear, as we do bag them up and put them in a washer that we have, but they still off gas a little bit in the bay. So it's really trying to prevent any of those chemicals or toxins to be where we're working on an ongoing basis, whether we're doing drills or, you know, coming and responding to calls, things like that. So it's this plan would theoretically put our turnout gear in a safer place off to the side, that we would have special lighting in there because UV rays and fluorescent lights are also bad for our turnout gear. It breaks them down prematurely. So it would take away the light and the UV rays and also get the turnout gear out of areas where we are working.
Thanks, Callie. So one of the other study objectives was to identify short-term solutions and a master plan. So there are opportunities, as you'll see, as we continue to go through this project, where there's some short-term recommendations or scopes that you can consider. There's also a master plan concept for the full site. And the council also prioritized using existing city-owned properties, and so that's why you see us focused on our existing site at 801 Jonathan Carver Parkway. So just an aerial view of the site. To the south, that's the fire station, apparatus bay. On the north side of the building is public services. The middle part of the building is shared. You can see in the kind of the northwest corner, kind of for those of you familiar with Quonset huts, it's kind of a Quonset hut looking structure. Remember those?
Now you're just showing off. No.
I don't.
You don't know what a Quonset hut is?
No.
It's like a pork chop.
But
At
chicken.
St. Peter and Paul's Elementary School in St. Cloud, they look old 1940s, like metal curved roof. It was kind of World War II area, and that's where we had our lunchroom. So-
We might have had it, we just called it a shed.
It's a Stearns County thing, unfortunately. My brothers and sister are laughing somewhere right now, just hearing me think about that.
I went to see Peter and Paul, but it was in Mankato.
So a picture of our main building at 801 Jonathan Carver Parkway. Just for some reference, here you can see the turnout gear stored in the apparatus bay, the fire station, and how it's has its proximity to our existing vehicles.
Do you get to add your own pictures above your turnout gear, or do you, are those for fun?
No, we take them on an ongoing basis.
Okay.
All right, let's keep going.
Sorry.
Our existing public services storage building at 117 Broadway, again, this is the former fire station. This is the space that we were just talking about in relation to 100 block of Broadway. Kind of a little history piece on this of how far we've come. This is the public services storage at Lions Park, which actually was the city's main facility for public works prior to the new fire station being built on Jonathan Carver Parkway. So to think that they operated out of one garage door for decades is pretty amazing. This is storage at our existing water treatment plant, and again, some of these items are going to remain. You're going to have generators and trucks in our existing garages. The proposal isn't to get rid of all that. At some point, just based on conversations and plans, at some point the existing facility at 117 Broadway might go away. But what this does is add, or what the space study does is add space. This is something that might end up going away, where rather than storing a mower at a space at the bottom of a water tower, you might find a space in a new storage garage for ease of maintenance, access, etc. So to get to the findings, in May of 2021, they were presented to the council, kind of put them down into scope. So scope 1 is the construction of about 9,600 square feet on the existing site, kind of just west of the building, kind of where the fenced-in exterior storage is. At that time, an estimated project cost of $2.3 million. Turnout gear concept, 820 square feet addition to the south side of the fire station. At the time, estimated at about $420,000. And then we had a master plan concept that looked at having the fire station take over the whole existing facility, and then a new facility as an add-on to whatever space the city added it on for the garage space that we'll be looking at. So kind of some visual representations. So this is that 9,600 square foot area. It kind of wraps around the existing kind of monopole cell tower that's in the area. And then you can see on the bottom here, fire station turnout gear storage, separated by a wall and having its own HVAC system for ventilation purposes. Kind of a summary of the master plan again. So as you can see, the building to the right, the existing building, undetermined year, but at some point fire department takes over the whole building and goes into a fire station. Full build out of that 2024 public services building. That's in the master plan. So it's an extension of what we build hypothetically in 2024 with some additional offices. At the time, to do a complete build out in May of 21, we were looking at a $7 million project cost. In addition, we'd have to do some on-site ponding work. As some of you may recall, kind of on the south side of the building to your left, there's a stormwater pond facility that we would have to relocate at some additional cost should we move forward at some point in time with the master plan. A piece that I wanted to introduce and that kind of Chad's going to help us out with a little bit here is looking at an opportunity to do some building, facility, and maintenance. This is essentially a financing question. At some point, to some degree, we're going to have to do some pretty significant maintenance to the existing facility. And so we're looking to have a conversation and get some feedback from the council eventually on how you want that financed. And so essentially broken down into the rooftop, HVAC units and self-storage facility. They're percolating to a point where we're going to, this year need to be thinking about including them in our long-term financial and capital plan. Anywhere from 1 to 5+ years, depending upon priorities and costs, etc. Wanted to have a conversation about that. You have a little bit of background on some maintenance funding strategies. Typically, this is under A, that's our kind of our annual budget as it relates to building repair and maintenance in the general water and sanitary sewer funds. if we have a significant project, we can look at an interfund loan. We haven't done that, but it's I think a pretty solid way to finance projects internally without interest and bond costs. Based on kind of what you hear in your priorities related to maintenance, you might want to consider financing some of those for 20 years, just because of the economies of scale as it relates to doing a big building project. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chad, just if you can just walk us through, for the council, through the rooftop HVAC units and the self-storage facility.
So we're looking at kind of from a big scope picture. The salt storage is a 60 by 40, and it holds about 400 tons. So as the city grows, gets more streets. Right now, that capacity halfway through the year, we've used up about 300 ton of salt. So we're just trying to plan. We could reskin this for maybe $15,000, 15 to 20, but some of those support structures, this structure has been in for almost 20, I believe 21 years. So the contractor that we met with to look at this building was very surprised that some of those steel structures were still standing, because they must have done something in the process, but it's still in pretty good shape. The biggest piece is the outer structure. If that would tear, then that salt would get wet. And then, just like I said, planning for the future, we want to be able to keep the same footprint but extend it to the west. There's a few different sizes that we could go. We could go up to almost 100 million ton of salt in there, just in that footprint.
Chad, do you buy all the salt pre-season, or do you get more as the winter goes on?
The cooperative salt purchase agreement actually runs from June 1st to June 1st. So our budget runs from January to December. So we typically buy like in January and then again before June. Does that answer your question?
Well, you were saying that there's about 400 ton that you keep in there at
Yes.
once?
Yes.
And that and then you said 300 ton. Tell me, that's how much we use in the year?
That's about, depending on the snow and the events. This is the first year that we're tracking our salt usage, but it's about half full right now.
Okay. So if we were to run out, we would have to purchase more. Do we have budget for that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
We actually ordered some today.
Okay. So when you have, good. We need it. When you have the 400 ton in there, is that all the way to the front?
Yes.
How's that stacking there?
Yes, it stacks up. The blocks around the perimeter are about 4 feet high, so it's mounded up 4 feet high on the outsides.
Okay. So we've never gone through a winter though where we've actually used all the salt since you've been here?
Since I've been here, no. The last couple of events haven't really been that bad. We've gotten close a few times.
Or you can use some tonight.
Right.
Right,
Yes.
but I'm saying with what you have for storage there, you've been able to get by with what's in there. So it's not like you needed 200 more at one point, and
No, the biggest piece for the design of it is having the steel columns or supports sitting in the salt. This new design would alleviate that,
okay.
because at some point those supports are going to rust through. There's already, you can see the close-up in the bottom right-hand corner, they're already starting to deteriorate because they're sitting in the salt.
Is this the same product used for the brine?
Yes. Yep, it's just straight rock salt.
Okay.
As far as like the HVAC maintenance, we do have a private service contract that comes out and does the servicing on the units. They're in good health. Kelly and I have been talking over the last couple of years, and we were talking of replacing one unit for the next 5 years at the Public Services Fire Department. And then the roof maintenance, again, it's the same company that, or another private contractor that does the spring and fall roof maintenance inspections. We've been monitoring one leak at the building, at least since I've started. And it's just, we keep monitoring, and if it gets worse, we'll have to put it in that long-term plan. we've talked about it a few times, and we wanted to get the rooftop or the HVAC units done first, and then the roof. So,
The HVAC units are a 20-year piece of equipment, so they, 2023 is when the fire station was built, I believe, so public services fire station. So I believe they're at the end of their life.
Right.
Also, if you think about us doing one unit at a time, we're also bringing out a crane each time, so there's also some additional costs that could be saved by doing it all at once versus doing each one individually, because otherwise you're bringing out a crane each time to lift them off and lift them back on. So.
Have any of them failed then at this point?
We a couple of years, was it 2 years ago, we ended up putting in a new heat exchanger in one of them, correct?
yes, yep, that was probably 3 years ago.
Well, the reason I ask is because, you know, the lifespan, they say is 20, but if they're still in good operational order, then I don't know why we would want to spend money on it now. Of course, we don't want them all to go down at once, but I'm just trying to be, this is a lot of money here, so I'm trying to be responsible with things that maybe aren't, it's not necessary right now. Doesn't mean in a few years we won't have to look at it again.
We have looked back at some of the inspection logs that the contractor has done, and the ones that kind of keep on nickel and diming us, those are the ones that we had scheduled to talk about replacing.
The HVAC units?
Mhm.
Okay. And I'm sorry, how many of them were up there again?
I believe is it 4?
I believe so.
4.
So, I'm sorry, going back to the salt storage for that 2 to 250, does
Mhm.
that get you a larger building in addition to the
Yeah,
improvements you talked about?
yes, it's a little bit different design, but it would also double capacity.
Okay.
Mhm.
And I feel differently than you do, Christy, on the HVAC units on the roof. If we're making all these improvements to the building, it seems silly, especially when we have the opportunity to bond for everything together. You know, if 4 of those units, I'm gonna make sure they're looking at the right line. If we have a really bad year, and even if half of them poop out on us, that's $100,000 or $180,000, you know, like that's a lot of money that we would have to come up with. And knowing the parameters of our budget, that would be a really tough hole to fill. So I think knowing what we know now and hearing that there's a need, I think that we would be best suited to replace them all when we're making improvements to that building.
And I, want to emphasize, like, when I say scope refinement needed, like, this is, look at this the same as you would, like, the concept plan for the park. I mean, if you are interested in the topic, we can really dig in and have, like, the architects look at it, do an assessment, get an idea of what would be needed. So, like, these are intentionally, like, the range is wide and the price is high because, we haven't been in good situations where we've overpromised and underdelivered on costs, and we come back and say, just in recent memory, like the city hall, when we had to do a cost adjustment, that caused some heartburn, and so we want to start high and hopefully get lower, but not make it so conservative that the numbers are ridiculous where you wouldn't even consider. Does that make sense?
So if we add on the fire department alcove, I always call it that, for the turnout gear, is that able to hook into the current HVAC system, or are we gonna have to add additional units for that?
It would be a separate HVAC unit for that one room.
That one, okay. Is that because of it needs to filter differently because of?
We don't want it circulating with the
Right.
existing.
Okay.
So kind of,
I'm sorry, is that all included in here?
that's included in the
In
number for the fire station.
It is included in that, okay.
So you can if you follow the path and, as far as building construction goes, these numbers are kind of a moving target just based on our economy and the bid landscape. But, the 2020 space study numbers, a lot has happened in the world since then. Our long-term financial plan has the numbers listed as of 2022. And talking with Wold and kind of looking at bidding, we think at least scope 1 and scope 2 are probably more reasonable. But again, the next phase of this would be cutting the architects loose on doing design development, not creating construction drawings, but meeting with the fire department, meeting with public services, defining that scope, and then coming back to the council with an estimate. Think of it as like, if you're gonna do like your basement, wanna redo your basement or finish off your basement, the contractor could give you a price per square foot of a normal basement, but once you start figuring out if you're gonna put a bathroom or a fireplace in there, the numbers start looking different. And so frankly, we need to go through that exercise with whatever scopes you're interested in pursuing so that we can show you what you'd get for an estimated cost. But right now, this is basically, they've given us a number of cost per square foot for a box. And so the next step would be letting that number evolve based on what the needs are in conversations. Again, every step of the way, the council looking at that. So on the high side, we've priced out a scope at 1.1 million for building maintenance. We believe that's if everything needed to be replaced at the highest cost. And then for conversational purposes, if you looked at the master plan and you just built the whole public services space right away, that full build out would be just under 6 million. So, as we move forward with these next steps, we're hoping at some point this July to get to a completed design where then we can have the council determine what scopes we'd want to move forward with for public engagement, and then also including in a bid at some point. And again, those numbers are likely to change, but we're hoping based on kind of our pre-work that they wouldn't change significantly. And again, some of this is noted in the comment on the bottom. We have designated funds in water and sanitary sewer to pay for at least the public services side, since water and sanitary sewer services are provided out of public services. So just kind of looking at the schedule, so September 2020 through August of 2022, we kind of went through that. I would note we have done a little bit of engagement in October of 21. The mayor's message had a kind of a recap of the space study that we did in the fire station and public services. But kind of fast forwarding to today, we wanted to give you that project update, get the council on the same page as far as what the dynamics of the project are and the scoping exercise or opportunities for you to choose from. At your next work session on the 21st, Lynn's going to be leading a conversation on the impact of these different scenarios as it relates to levy, as it relates to impact on an average value home. And then if you're ready, the council can consider verifying that scope and proceeding with design drawings from both, again, not construction drawings, but doing that next level of analysis and scoping so that we can have a more refined project scope and a more refined cost related to that. And then moving forward, we go from March through June to get that done. In June and July, have the city council review that design and cost estimates. Once you felt secure in that process, then we'd start kind of all forms of community engagement. I think we had some pretty good success with the city hall process, doing listening sessions, newsletter articles, putting residents and other stakeholders in a position where they can come to a meeting and not feel like the decision's being made that night, but just kind of ask questions, share their thoughts. And so we can be, I think, pretty deliberate with that. Getting into kind of November toward the end of the year, if you're to the point where you feel like comfortable with cutting the engineers loose on construction drawings, you can start that formal process starting in November to issue that city project, start the financing process, which would be a capital improvement bond, which would be similar to what the city issued for the city hall project. And then Wold did tell us to plan for some construction material lead time, especially with the public services building on the materials, but essentially building construction in August of 24 and completion in May of 25 if everything went as we are thinking that would today. But again, this is just a concept, not only in like the project dynamics, but like the actual process dynamics of where the community's at, how confident you feel, what information you need. All those things are going to impact how this schedule might look. But the purpose of this was to kind of give you kind of a 5,000 foot view of like, these are all the things that we're considering. And if you want something more emphasized in a different way, we can do that. But we're kind of in the kitchen with the ingredients. You have to tell us what you want added more, what you want taken out of that recipe. So looking at, again, what we're asking tonight is basically to update you on these 3 scope areas. We're gonna come back on February 21st with some financial information. I think a critical thing that we want to maybe leave tonight with is if you have any like immediate reactions, where you're like, absolutely not, absolutely yes, more of this. I'm gonna need to have this information in order to make a decision on this. Anything that we can do that in the end will help you justify whatever decision you wanna make on this topic. So with that, I'll turn it back to the council.
All right, thank you. Joy, you wanna go first?
Sure thing. So the thing I want to understand in the financials is, I know we've been kind of watching our debt plan over time, right, and kind of how this would fit into that. I'm seeing in the project timeline that it sounds like the financing approvals would be in early '24, so I assume that's when we bid and that's when we would start our debt, right? So just kind of understanding how that plays with all the other debt we have. I know some of it is coming down, and so is this replacing that, and kind of how much, kind of that sort of scale. So that would be really important for me to understand from a financial perspective. I think that's all I can think of right now, but you guys go.
Lori? On this slide, is the scope in a certain order? It's not order of priorities, is it? It's not order
No,
of
I would
cost?
just, yeah, it's not an order of priority, scope 1 and 2. I separated them out because there are different, financing mechanisms that might go
Yeah.
into that.
Okay.
And because they're
So it
different
could be-
departments,
Pull one out.
I think you'd have depending upon where you land, I think any one of them would be it was somewhat difficult to finance internally
Okay.
without putting a strain on the city's finances. So you're probably looking at a bond. It's just a matter of how much and over what period and the terms, et cetera.
So you're not asking us which one we prioritize higher?
No, if
No,
there,
'cause
I would say if, as an example, you just said, I just don't believe we need additional vehicle and equipment storage.
Okay.
You might say like, I don't support scope 1. I don't think it's needed at this time or within the next 5 years. I do support scope 2 for the fire department, and I'm interested in the maintenance. Like if that was a position of you or other members of the council, it'd be helpful to understand that, because we don't want to exert resources and time on maybe a scope that the council just doesn't feel comfortable with, or like maintenance, or like, well, we'd rather just have that as a part of the annual maintenance plan. We're not interested in financing that, so let's not even pursue that. Or we're only interested in the self-storage building. The other two, we'll take as it comes. Like that type of feedback would be helpful to us.
Yes, I guess I would support all of them. If I were to prioritize them, it's just scope 2 I would put on top. And then scope 1 and then scope 3. So scope 3 I like in that I don't want to be in a situation where I say, oh, I didn't know we had something that was 20 years old and it's expected to fail any day. So I just, even though this might not be till 2005, but just knowing that there's a plan for something like one of the 4 major HVAC things. So that reason. What would help me is, and maybe it's just like for me with numbers, for the new dollar amounts that we have, like break out how much it is per square footage. So like the storage must be like, looks like a little under $300 per square footage versus the turnout gear, you're looking at almost $600 per square footage. That just helps me because I can see, I wouldn't want to pay $600 square footage for storage. Not that I really know what like the average is, but if I were to compare it to, wow, do we need something that nice? Or like, is this gonna do what we need? So just break it down.
And is that a want for like the completed design or the pre-design? Because I would, if I could just add to that, like the completed design will be the more real number based on what staff is saying should go into that. The pre-design is that conceptual number based on, I would say, arbitrary factors in some instances. So
then the later part.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that would be more helpful, because I think you're right. I mean, you could come up, what if it's 300, you're better at math than I am, 300 a square foot on that.
33%.
33%.
Yeah.
I knew somebody wouldn't let it go.
I wouldn't argue that would be.
Like, it kind of helps too, like,
I
you
wouldn't-
don't want somebody to come and say, wow, you spent that much for that size, and
Right.
then, yeah, just.
Okay, that's good. You know, when we come back at some point with that completed design, we'll have that broken out as you
Okay.
requested, so you can get a sense of how that compares, and hopefully, we can show that up against maybe other similar projects, so you can have a reference point.
Anything else?
So I'm in support of all three. As we're talking about square footage, I just assume that's because it's specialized storage. We're not talking about a container. We're talking about specific ventilation and all the requirements for the turnout gear. So we just make sure we speak to that. So the only comment I have at this point in scope 3 is if we're talking about the roof on our largest surface area roof, I think maybe in 2024 it's worth looking at doing a study on the ROI for solar. The city doesn't have that. That would seem a logical place to look at that. I don't know enough about that. I think we probably have a resident expert here on putting solar on your roof, but
I'm sure the state has grants available for commercial and city buildings. I know they've been investing that, not just from a state budget perspective, but also from the Inflation Reduction Act. So if we were gonna consider it for both buildings, it's our surface area, might as well maximize it.
so if we're making plans around that and putting in, replacing the HVAC units, this would absolutely be the time to do that kind of study. And
Sure.
you know, the ROI on solar is completely different than it was 10 years ago, and I think it's probably been a long time since there's been any consideration of it. That's just nice.
It's a good point, that was not on my radar.
I know, I want to look at those green steps, these things.
Christy?
That could be one of those.
I mean, I think, well, scope 1 and 2, obviously, I'm fully supportive of. Scope 3, we don't want our roof leaking, obviously, I think that needs to be taken care of. I'm a little unsettled about changing out things that currently are working. It doesn't sound like the rest of the council has that same feeling, but I do agree with Joy. I want to see how that is affecting the rest of those numbers as we move forward, because again, this is a lot of money, and I want to see how that fits into that. That's all I have.
Okay.
Hey, just before you go,
Yeah.
I just want to express, I didn't finish, right? I support all of this. I like that we're putting the building maintenance big pieces in there, because remember, as budgeting, we've talked about like capital equipment spending, right? And kind of chunking it up a little bit more, maybe considering different financing mechanisms. I like the idea of doing the same thing for some of these bigger building maintenance things. This is not going to end because we keep building buildings and we're going to have big maintenance things, so I like us being planful and chunking them together. You know, I wasn't the first one or he was the first one who mentioned the solar, but I mentioned it to Brent too when I talked about it.
Okay, you guys both get
And I was
credit.
like,
I get no credit.
We're all on the same page.
Anywhere here.
We're on the same page with that, so I fully support that. I mean, the city spends a tremendous amount of budget on electricity, and costs are only going to go up. So, the more that we can generate our own, the cost savings faster cost savings we can have in the future for that. Yeah, so my concern was about the debt. I was also thinking, and I don't know if this is the case or not, but any of these items, do they play into our long-term projections of the water fees or connection fees and stuff like that, and kind of how that might impact as well? That was the other piece I was thinking about. Okay, I'm done.
I'm sorry if I moved on from you before.
No, it's totally, I didn't fully complete.
Okay. I am in favor of all of it. I've expressed my support for the fire station addition previously, so long ago that we might have had an addition had we gone forward with it at the time. Years and years ago, when I was first elected to council, I drove around with Brian Skoke and wanted to see what our storage situation looked like, and he was super excited that we had a little bit more storage at the time because they just purchased large racks and they were able to store up instead of store at ground level. So there's definitely a need, and I think that the pictures did a really good job of showing how literally stuff is shoehorned. into the buildings that we have now. As far as scope 3, I do, want to, and I've talked to Brent about this, have more of a long-term process. We're gonna need a new roof and new HVAC units on this building someday, and we are probably, 3 years into that countdown clock ticking down?
Yeah.
So for the bigger stuff, I would love to have that in a longer than our long-term financial plan, looking 20 years down the road and saying, okay, we're gonna roughly need a roof on City Hall on 2029 or however, let's assume we get 20 years out of a roof, I don't know how long these last, but having that kind of plan. I think these needs are identified now and we have the option to take care of them sooner rather than later. If we've got 4 20-year-old HVAC units on the roof of the fire station and public services building, we don't have, Murphy's Law, those things are gonna all come due and start falling apart at the same time, and that's just too big of a budget hole for our small city to handle. That's a lot of reshuffling the priorities on the fly with cold firefighters and cold public services staff. So, or hot, depending on the season. But I'm in favor of scopes 1, 2, and 3. I don't have anything else additional to say, but I liked what Joy had to say about figuring out the financial impact and giving credit to both Eric and Joy. I think that now would be the time to take a look into solar and see what that can do for us long term. Do you guys have what you need from us? Okay. All right. Can you do strategic plan update?
3 minutes?
3 minutes.
Yeah, if I can, I'll save that to the regular meeting and just, if we can skip to my
Sure.
updates.
Yeah.
So I asked, I think as most of you know, there's a lot of interest in the skating rink at Community Park, and so Chad and I were talking about it, and there's, just based on a conversation I've had with them, there's a lot more to like building that ice rink than what meets the eye, just even from my perspective. So I asked Chad if he could share a few thoughts on what goes into that, just as a kind of a mutual learning opportunity.
Want me to go now?
Sure.
So obviously over the course, there's multiple floods. We have morning floods, evening floods, and that raises the ice only a fraction of an inch. And then when we get weather that's 37 degrees and raining, we basically start over tomorrow, depending on temperatures. But it's a long process. It uses a lot of water, a lot of man hours. If there's any snow events, we have to clean it before we can flood it. Otherwise, the ice isn't good. It just cracks underneath the skate. So it's a long process, and this year has been very challenging with precipitation and temperatures. So
You talk about the drainage. I thought that was
So,
interesting.
yeah, we actually when I was a young kid as a seasonal, the town that I worked in actually had just grass berms that would hold water pretty much all year long, and then we would put up hockey boards around that. As long as it holds water, it will make ice. Just look at a pond or a street that holds water. So this summer we're gonna really work on trying to figure out how we can make this thing hold water for next year, and then it will decrease our maintenance time and efforts.
But it's constructed to drain water.
Yes, it's just like a road, it's ground, so anything you put on it, if it melts, it drains away. So in the summertime when it rains, the water sheds off of it. So,
But it doesn't do what we'd like it to do for its purpose.
right,
Trust me, this was the bane of my existence once upon a
right.
time also. And it does hurt my brain when I look outside and see that it's raining and people get on social media and say, well, why isn't the ice rink up? Well, I don't know, if you put your ice tray outside, are you making ice right now? It's kind of common sense. So I'm not sure if that's the right way, but good luck. I don't know what to do. But it is actually, it's built I would say it's not built correctly to start with. It's humped in the middle, stuff drains out. Where do most of the people, they're skating in the middle, it wears down right in the center. It's just,
And it's been a challenging season.
oh, the season's been terrible.
The weather has been crazy. We had 3 days worth of plowing snow, which I appreciate that your priorities are making sure that the streets and trails are plowed instead of working on the,
How old is that rink?
again? Well, it's a basketball court.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
It's been here a while, I mean, it's been a while.
Paul was here, so it's been within the last 23 years.
I know. Well, I started here, 2007, and it was here then.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I think it was early 2000s.
Did it come along about when the
2003 to
fire station went
2007.
up?
It could have been.
It
Yeah.
might
So
have
about 2003 even?
Yeah.
Yeah.
3 or 4.
Yeah.
All right, this 6:50, being mindful of the
All right.
time.
This, one last item, just wanted to update the council. The state just adopted some legislation making June 19th, or what's called Juneteenth, a state holiday. It doesn't take effect until August 1st of 2023. We have a council meeting on June 19th, so in case there was a concern, but that'll be something that we'll add to the city's official calendar starting in January 1 of 2024. And then we'll be presenting some changes to the employee reference manual to make that a holiday for the employees. Again, something for you to consider in the fall, but a significant piece, and with June just around the corner, I just wanted to make sure people knew that that would be starting in 2024, not June 18th of this year, so.
All right,
Close circuit to Paul Schultz.
that I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
By Eric and a second by Councilmember Prince. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. All right.